This video is brought to you by Brilliant. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has been in power for 14 years now. However, Orbán's reign now looks increasingly under threat from a new and popular challenger, Peter Magyar, whose catch-all centrist Teaser party is steadily creeping up in the polls. So in this video, we'll run through a recent history of Hungarian politics, why Magyar's opposition party is on the rise, and whether he can actually unseat Viktor Orbán. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. But first, let's start with some context. Orbán's nationalist conservative Fidesz party won its first parliamentary majority in 2010 and has since won every subsequent election with roughly 50% of the popular vote. In 2014, the largest opposition party was the short-lived Left Unity Party, an alliance that was then disbanded due to its poor showing at the ballot box, achieving just 38 seats compared to Fidesz's 133. In 2018, the conservative Jobbik Party became the main opposition, but did even worse, winning just 26 seats. Then, in 2022, a new opposition alliance was formed, as Hungary's disparate opposition parties accepted they needed to cooperate to challenge Fidesz. This was the United for Hungary movement, whose shared ideology was basically anyone but Orbán. While they fared better than Jobbik, winning 57 seats, this was still miles off Fidesz's 135, and the alliance fell apart after the election. Now though, in 2024, a new challenger has emerged. The Teaser party, which was founded a few years ago but remained largely unknown until earlier this year, when it got a new injection of life from a former Fidesz official, Peter Magyar, is now polling at around 35%, compared to Fidesz's 42%, according to Politico's poll aggregator. It also performed well at the European elections in June, securing nearly 30% of the vote, and causing Fidesz's vote share to drop below 50 for the first time at a national election since 2004. So why are Magyar's Teaser party climbing in the polls? Well, as we see it, there were at least three reasons. Firstly, the Fidesz government's recent scandals. Secondly, Orbán's economic struggles and battle with the EU. And thirdly, Magyar's own popularity. We'll start with the Fidesz scandals. In February 2024, Hungary's President Catalin Novak, plus Magyar's ex-wife and Orbán's Justice Minister Judit Varga, were both forced to resign after it emerged they pardoned a man involved in covering up a sex abuse scandal at a children's home. This prompted huge anti-government rallies across the country, and the reason it caused so much outrage was because, in line with the rest of Fidesz, Novak had presented herself as a defender of traditional Christian family values and a protector of children. The Hungarian public were understandably incensed by Novak's hypocrisy, which massively undermined Fidesz's pro-family agenda and caused Fidesz's poll ratings to slump from 48% to around 40%, where it's still sitting now. This political earthquake also opened up space for a vocal anti-Orbán figure. Magyar, then a member of Fidesz, announced that he was quitting the party in a Facebook post, claiming Orbán's rule was a political product, before going on to give a series of interviews in which he declared that Orbán's government was rife with corruption, and that Orbán's allies had racked up huge personal wealth hidden behind domestic private equity funds. Magyar then decided to join Teaser, whose whole project is basically cleaning up Hungarian politics. Teaser's website states that they want to be, quote, incorruptible, non-blackmailable, honest, straightforward, open, and extremism-free. So Fidesz's recent scandal has likely turned a lot of angry voters towards Teaser. Now, on to our next reason, which is Hungary's ongoing financial struggles. Since the pandemic, Hungary has run annual budget deficits representing about 7% of GDP, way more than the EU's 3% target. As a result, the government had to up its deficit target for 2024 from 2.9% to 4.5% of GDP. But by June, they'd already passed it, and Hungary now has the highest deficit among the so-called Visegrad 4. Funnily enough, one reason for this overspending was actually Orbán's fear of losing votes to the opposition. In late 2021, for the first time, Fidesz was polling extremely close to the opposition United for Hungary movement. So to ensure his victory as the 2022 election approached, Orbán went all out on a public spending spree. He dished out extra money for pensioners, scrapped income tax for young people, and offered families grants to renovate their homes, with the combined measures totting up to about $2 billion. The Fidesz government also extended a generous family benefit scheme that now costs nearly 5% of GDP per year. Hungary's economic woes have been further strained by Orbán's complicated relationship with the EU. Hungary is still lacking access to about 21 billion euros of cohesion and recovery funds, which have been frozen over concerns over judicial independence. Then, last week, the EU also triggered a special procedure to subtract a €200 million fine from Hungary's share of the EU budget, because the government had twice missed its payment deadline. To capitalise on this, TISA have said that they would join the European Public Prosecutor's Office, which is responsible for monitoring the use of EU funds in Hungary, and basically ensure that they're not being embezzled, misused, or transferred to oligarchs. That said, TISA's public spending programme doesn't sound much thriftier than Orbán's. TISA's so-called 21-point programme includes policies like immediately doubling the family allowance, increasing the pensions of 420,000 elderly people, increasing wages for nurses and social workers, and allocating, quote, as many resources as possible to health and education, but without any clear indication of how they pay for it all. So, now, the real question is, what are TISA's chances at the ballot box? Well, it's still a while until the next national election in 2026, but TISA support is growing rapidly, and they're undeniably making an impression. This is in large part down to Magyar himself. Magyar is relatively young and charismatic, but also patriotic and relatively conservative when it comes to social issues. Combined with his anti-corruption politics, this allows him to present as a fresh face without scaring off more conservative voters. However, TISA should be wary of falling into the same pitfalls as its predecessor. Like other opposition alliances before, TISA is a big tent or catch-all party that describes itself as uniting conservatives, bourgeois democrats, social democrats and liberals, and aims to, quote, build a sovereign, civil, modern European Hungary. TISA's 21-point programme speaks to this ideological ambiguity. It's sort of just a collection of seemingly random policy ideas, often just spending increases for Orbán's policies, that lack a coherent ideology. Unfortunately for TISA, previous elections have shown that simply being anti-Orbán isn't necessarily enough, and keeping such a wide coalition of voters equally happy is difficult, if not impossible. Ultimately, we'll just have to wait and see whether TISA's rise holds, although Hungary's recent electoral history is definitely not on its side. What do the world's best politicians have in common? They're willing to learn something new every day. And if you think that sounds too hard or too time-consuming or just too overwhelming for you to do, then you haven't tried Brilliant.org. Brilliant is where you learn by doing, with thousands of interactive lessons in maths, data analysis, programming, and AI. Like I said though, the real value here is that you can do this easily every day, truly committing to lifelong learning. Slowly, over time, you'll not only pick up new skills or get better at maths, but you'll also feel the satisfaction that comes with bettering yourself and staying ahead. For instance, if like many world leaders, you want to get better at handling finances, you might want to check out the ton of new data science content Brilliant has just released, all of which uses real-world data to train you to see trends and make better informed decisions. They're perfect for learners of any level to start or continue learning data analysis, with a full suite of new content covering data visualizations, algorithms, regression models, and more. Plus, you can gain additional insight by working with real datasets from sources like Airbnb, Spotify, Starbucks, and more. To try everything Brilliant has to offer free for a full 30 days, click on the link in the description.